I'm real happy I'm not insecure because I would think they don't want to come to the meeting.
They're reading.
They're coming. Okay, and I see Commissioner Bivens getting ready to come in. We'll go ahead, Mr. Mayor and fellow commissioners, and call the meeting of Economic and Community Development Committee to order. I'd like to thank all of you for your patience and thank you for agreeing to come and share information with us. We chose to come out here today because we're kind of trying to see if this will better accommodate the large numbers of people that we've been having recently. And we do expect over the next few months to have a number of entities to come and do reports. And so we're doing this today just to see how it works and then possibly continue this here in your government center. The members of the committee are myself, Elaine Lucas, Chair, Larry Schlesinger, the Vice Chair, Joe Allen, Bert Bivens, and Virgil Watkins. We also have Mayor and other commissioners who are here in the meeting. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Second.
It's been motioned and second to approve the minutes. Are there questions, comments? If not, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and those minutes of February 27th are approved. The first item on our agenda is Visit Macon. We old folks used to call it Convention and Visitors Bureau. And we have with us, if you'll just introduce yourself to, well, I don't know if there's anybody who doesn't know you, but introduce yourself, tell them your position, and then introduce anyone else that you have with you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Lucas, and on behalf of Visit Macon and to the rest of the commission, thank you for allowing us to be here for the Economic and Community Development. Okay, perfect, we're ready. All right. We do have a slideshow. I don't know if you'll have it in front of you. I do have some handouts available if you need those. I can pass those out at present. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me get some.
Okay, appreciate it. And I want to introduce a few folks that have joined me this morning. Our board chair, Patty Gibbs, our board vice chair, Kathy Garoppolo, and then from my team, Valerie Bradley, who's on our leadership team there at Visit Macon. They're here to make sure I represent well.
Okay.
And I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you. And I believe the topic we're going to talk about today is Visit Macon and our involvement with the film industry in our city and what we do. That being said, a special thanks to Film Macon. We have a great relationship in working with them going forward, and the ability to Elliot Dunwoody, Carol Sanford. We've had a great relationship in the past year that I've been here working with them. With that being said, Visit Macon, at present, the challenge we have is we cannot offer incentives for film. We cannot sign contracts. We cannot even issue permits for a film company coming in. But with that, we also have the ability to promote, assist, and market the film industry in Macon, and also support filmmaking as an organization as well, because that is a volunteer group at present. One of the first things I want to bring in, if you look at your slides, we entered into a partnership last year with Film Macon, Macon-Bibb, ourselves, and the Macon Film Festival. And we secured a billboard in the Atlanta market to get in front of the 1.5 million impressions and commuters in that market. I'm happy to say this year we were able to put it in our budget, so we're going to be able to do that this year again as Visit Macon to not only promote the film festival, but also to front of potential filmmakers, people like that. In regards to the film festival, we have been sponsors financially of that event, which is a great event. Got to go to my first one last year. Visit Macon, our theater was featured. That's an event that attracts about 60 filmmakers a year that come down here. So we not only worked with them financially as a sponsor, but also to the tune of social media, advertisements, being able to promote that event going forward. Next slide. So I've got that. One of the projects and initiatives that came out of our organization that we're very proud of is we partnered with Atlanta Eats, which is a show that airs up in the Atlanta market and then across the South. And we brought these filmmakers here, and I say filmmakers because our definition of film is not exclusive to major motion pictures. That includes commercials, that includes news segments, that includes features. In our world of travel and tourism, the feature is huge for us. So an opportunity to feature something like Atlanta Eats was great for us, very much a coup to bring them down here. They came down for 3 days with their cruise. We presented all our beer offerings and restaurant offerings to them. They selected a few and did a feature on it. We do have that feature, so if we have a little time at the end, we can show it to you. It's 5 minutes, but otherwise, I would advise you to come get a head shake. So that's a no on the film. But I would encourage you to go to our website and look at that, because it reached 65,000 people in that first week it aired. It's already been viewed 10,000 times through social media. So that's very much getting in front of people, inviting them down to experience our restaurants, our beers, as much as I have. So you can tell I enjoy it. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do there. We also worked this past year, we brought in a show called The Excursion. It's an outdoor adventure type show. It airs on Fox South and Destination America. And it has 500,000 viewers. And they did a feature on Macon and the outdoor activities that people can experience here. So you kind of sense in the theme for us as far as film. As far as luring potential filmmakers, we were one of the financial sponsors of this year's Choose Georgia, which is an event the state puts on at the Sundance Film Festival. We've all heard of Sundance and the movies and awards that come out of there. We were able to be a financial sponsor. If you look, you can see Macon featured, and that attracted about 250 filmmakers that came in and they were to see our brand, be a part of that. We also provided them with Macon gifts, so we're trying to encourage them, and that's our outreach as far as working with our Camera Ready Site Selection group. The next one is something that we were able to do for this year, is sponsor, and I'm going to show it to you because it's called the Georgia Source Book. This is a book that's sent out to a lot of the potential filmmakers, the studios, people like that. Weighs about 40 pounds. So this is a workout in itself. And I hope nobody ever pitches it at me because it hurts a lot. But we sponsored this financially to get the Macon ad in it in front of those filmmakers. So that's another way that we're able to do that through our marketing efforts. Move forward. There we go. 2017 from the Georgia Department of Tourism was the year of film. The previous year was the year of music. This is the year of film. So one of the things that we were able to do is highlight all those motion pictures that were filmed here in Macon. In addition, if you come down to our visitor center and look at our theater, we do the movie posters for all those major motion pictures filmed here to highlight that, as well as our website. And then we were also one of 10, and I'm going to date myself, selfie spots for film in Georgia to highlight that for 42 at Luther Williams. If you look at the picture, that's about as close as a selfie as I'm going to get because of my datedness. So that's one of the things that we work on. And then also there we go. Also in 2017, we highlighted film in Macon with our travel guide. Our 2017 travel guide featured that in it. In addition, Macon's own Jason Aldean came and filmed one of his videos here. Gonna know we were here. That highlighted Macon. We sponsored 48 rooms for the production crew coming in. So it gives you an idea of the rooms and our involvement going forward with those initiatives. And then finally, Macon Music Voyager. We were a sponsor IBS, international markets, and was something that featured our music here in Macon. This past year, we brought in 4 film crews. Now that's not major motion pictures. That's film crews that shoot commercials. That's film crews that shoot segments for shows on television. So film kind of takes on a lot of different forms for us and how we support that. For us, it's occasionally we will get approached by a film company that's coming in for their rooms. We had 3 movies filmed here last year, in my first year. We tracked with our hotels. They did 337 room nights for us. So to kind of put that in context, at any given time, Macon has 5,500 rooms available, hotel rooms. Last year, our average was about 60% occupancy, so that's about 3,300 rooms a day, okay? So if you look at our average daily rate, which is about $70, and then apply the 7% hotel motel tax, that's about $16,000 a day. So we were up 4% to that 60% occupancy. You add the local sales tax, that's another 7%, that's another $16,000. And then the state's $5 room fee is another $16,000. So you're looking at about $48,000 a day just in those tax lines that benefit our city, that move the collections. So those are some of the numbers that we work on. And what we're trying to do is raise that by just, for this next year, 2%, to go to 62% occupancy. And so that would mean another $500,000 a year coming in. So it's things like film, it's things like sports, it's things like conventions that we're out there working on every day to kind of move that needle, so to speak, on those hotel rooms and get that money flowing into our city. As far as challenges that we have when it comes to, say, the film industry, we do work with the Georgia Film Office on occasion. Like I said, they'll call us if there's a need for rooms that are happening. But also, you've heard of the production zone. Sometimes it's cost prohibitive for a film, major motion picture come down here because of being able to get the union workers back and forth as far as their budget. So those are some things that we kind of face as a challenge. Macon is also very unique with our architecture as far as the ability to do films. So we look at that as offsetting some of those challenges and creating opportunities. But we've been able to help filmmaking as far as financially, marketing, and also rooms. And then we're looking to do just a little bit more in this next year.
Okay, very good. Are there questions, comments from the committee? Commissioner Allen?
I heard over the last week or so that Georgia leads the nation, including California, on filming coming to Georgia. That Georgia's #1, California's 2, I believe what it said.
Correct. Georgia just passed California as #1 as far as film. And if you look at the numbers that we get from the state, that means about $9.5 billion in economic impact into our state.
To that point, I know that there was some pieces of legislation that was very concerning to the film industry. Like I know some of the guys were threatening. I think it had to do with LGBTQ rights.
Right.
How does that affect us, and do we make a statement or anything?
As far as what we've heard, and I can't speak for Elliot and Terrell, who deal with a lot of the site location folks. I haven't heard what they're hearing. As far as we've heard, we've kind of monitored things at our place to see if people may cancel trips or anything like that, and we've not received anything that has led us to believe that. But that's at this point, we're open for business, and at this point, we're looking forward to a great cherry blossom festival.
Okay. There are other questions, comments? On those films, you say you have some detailed information. You have the list of the ones that filmed here, and you have the economic
The problem we have as
information.
far as economic impact, and we've been able to track the hotel rooms because we're able to call our hotels. But a lot of times with film, it's catering, it's going to the hardware store and getting everything from wire to whatever materials they might need.
Right.
That's where the challenge comes in of getting our arms around the economic impact. Now that being said, we are working with some software and things to be able to try to do that more effectively. But we know what's been here and what we've worked with. It's going beyond that hotel and even the restaurant to a certain degree, and getting those real numbers that we can use as
Right.
They mean to the community.
Who makes the arrangements for the locals to be involved in filming? Is it the caterer, local transportation, all of those different things? Who makes those arrangements?
So what usually happens, and I'm only speaking for our involvement at this point, is they come in. On occasion, we might ask for a list of our caterers. Primarily, the site selection will come in, and they have people that are charged with that. They may have worked here before, and so they have a relationship. They may reach out to them. The site selection, and then through the state of Georgia, the film office there, they have a lot of resources that they also work with, and making sure that the caterers and things like that meet all the requirements they need, because sometimes there's very much a laundry list of what they need.
Okay. For a long time, I've had an interest in the film industry because I saw so much happening in this community, and at some point, we're going to, in my opinion, we're going to have to put our arms around that whole thing, and we've got to have an organized way of bringing films in, but also protecting our community. And right now, what's scary to me is that I'm not sure that the community's assets are being protected and that locals are benefiting like they should from the films that are coming in. Atlanta has a mayor's office of cultural affairs, and and you know about Atlanta, not only in filming but also in the music industry. And then Savannah has the Macon Film Commission. And it's a very organized way, and it brings money in, but it also protects the community because they get paid for, people coming and using what's in their community. So this will be an ongoing discussion, and we appreciate your being here today. You have any parting words for us?
That we would love to be a part of that discussion going forward, and anything we can do to not only promote and bring that industry here, so that we do have people staying here and using our local vendors, but we also look forward to seeing Macon up on the big screen, because I was fortunate enough to be able to witness 3 of those films filmed here last year.
Okay. How many members on your board of directors? You're an agency we fund, but there's a mechanism for getting board members on. I know there's some commissioners that are serving.
Yes, ma'am. We have 10 members on our board. We have representation of the hotel industry, restaurant industry, community at large. We do have Commissioner Shepard that sits on our board, as well as ex officio members from the chamber, economic development, and then education. So a makeup of 10, and those are appointed through a process, election process, and then of course the commissioner member is assigned by the commission.
All right. Does your board decide on raises and
Correct.
fees charged and all of that?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Are we seeing an upswing in tourism in general?
Yes, sir, very much. As I said, our occupancy rates last year were up 4%. We're already inching on pace to do that or significantly more this year. What we're seeing is we put a lot of effort into trying to entice a lot of the leisure travelers out of Atlanta and places like that. We're seeing benefits of that. Our weekends are up tremendously. So we're seeing a significant increase, not only in occupancy, but the rate and also the revenue that the hotels are seeing.
And is that from people who are just passing through, or people who are actually coming to Macon to
Sure.
see Macon?
We do have transient, what we call transient, which are people that just on the interstate that happen to stop, or we do have 2 visitor centers. One is now being redone by GDOT out at the I-75 split.
When will that be reopened?
They're telling us end of June. So that right now we're watching our numbers to see how that might impact us, because we still have our downtown visitor center open. But as far as being able to recruit groups, we do go out and actively target meeting planners, sports planners, things like Case in point, we booked 2 new events last week that have never been to Macon before. One was sports, and one was, without giving too much away, is classic cars. And those will be about 600 room nights for those 2 events in this year, which for us, a lot of times we're targeting a year, 2 years beyond to bring these planners in.
Okay, Commissioner.
Not related to films, but you just reminded me of something that if you could check on for me. I'm understanding as part of the tax reform plan that state right-of-ways, like our visitor center on the interstate, now would have the ability to be commercialized. Is that something you're familiar with, and so can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. You mean as far as being able to merchandise and things like that?
Well, merchandise revenue right now, I guess those places are supposed to be somewhat non-revenue driven. You couldn't have a restaurant in there. You couldn't do vending.
We've asked that question because when we looked at that contract, it was a little bit prohibitive in what we could and couldn't do out there, because we do have a healthy retail component of our downtown visitor center, and we kind of wanted to extend that, so we've been in conversation with that. As far as legislation to change that, I don't know that there's anything other than us applying to be able to do that.
Could you look into it a little bit? Like I said, it's part of the new tax reform package, and I guess there's multiple sides to it. One of the sides being that it would allow your business to generate more revenue, but the flip side, if we were to go full out with a gas station and eating places in that area, that it could have an impact on people coming into the city and somewhat cannibalizing that revenue.
Very much.
So yeah, if you just follow. All right.
How do you support the mayhem? And we've got the Georgia Doom coming up on their inaugural game on the 24th. Tell us just briefly how you
We actually
help
do,
market.
that's part of our sports component, and we have a person that has responsibilities in the sports arena for us. And one of the things that we do is we're doing, it's under construction right now, hoping to be live by the time next week rolls around, is a sports page dedicated to our teams. Because what those do is they not only generate some stays from the opposing teams and fans that may come in, but the main thing, it gives not only our citizens quality of life, but also our visitors that are in town looking for something to do. We do field a lot of phone calls or have somebody stop by our visitor center and say, hey, I'm in town on business. What is there to do tonight? We get that question more than anything. And having these teams allows us to be able to say, hey, you need to go catch the Doom, or, oh, the Macon-Bacon are playing right now. You need to go over to Luther Williams to see that.
Okay. Anything else? Mayor, you have any? Okay. Ms. County Manager. Okay. If not, thank you all very much for being here. We do appreciate it, and we'll be calling on you from time to time to give us an update. Tell us the good news about what you're doing for Macon-Bibb. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Each one of these is allotted about 10 minutes to present, and 5 for question and the answers. We appreciate that. That took half of our audience, didn't it? Okay, the next topic is opioids in the community. All right, we have our sheriff who's going to kind of give us an update on opioids in the community. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here.
Thank you all for having this topic. And this is opioid abuse, and the prevalence of it is something that is affecting all of the communities really across the nation, and we're not immune to that here locally either. I got my folks to get some stats up from some of the cases we've had just in the last few months. They've arrested over 10 folks for opioid sales. Heroin is what we usually see, plus prescription drug abuse. You remember last summer we made national news about some of the fake Percocet pills, but that has continued. Our folks last year worked with the FBI and was able to arrest and bring charges against a a major heroin dealer here locally. And so that is one of the things. But on the health aspect, and I know the health department talk about that and talk about some of the things here, but we see it on the other side of that, not on where anybody gets arrested, but we deal with folks who have overdosed, who may be going to the hospital or even have passed away. In fact, after the situation that happened last summer, I put the order out that all of our patrol deputies as well as our drug squad deputies have the Narcan kits. We were able to get that through a state grant, and that paid off for us right here.
Explain what the Narcan.
Narcan is a substance that counteracts opioid heroin or opioid overdose. It's rendered nasally through the nose, and so they put that in someone who is exhibiting signs of overdose, and it brings people around. Back before Christmas, two of our deputies came upon a gentleman in a car up on off of Northside Drive that was exhibiting signs of opioid overdose, and they were able to give him that medicine and saved his life. So we're seeing it. We're seizing a portion of it. It's still not our number one drug that we see the most of. Marijuana still seems to be the most prevalent drug that we see on illicit, but prescription drug abuse as well as heroin and even some cases the fake drugs, we're seeing more and more of that, and it is as much a law enforcement problem as it is a public health crisis. It's probably more a public health crisis than it is law enforcement right now, because there are so many people that have prescriptions, and we're starting to see people who get the prescriptions for the opioids, like Oxycontin, those kinds of medicines, and they run out or they become addicted, and that's when they start looking for the street for their fix.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
Yeah,
Go.
there's a book called Dreamland, which was National Book Award, talked about this whole opioid crisis. And what it said is that as prescriptions get harder to get, and or maybe even more expensive, black tar heroin, which is sold on the streets, was a cheaper option, and it was actually more prevalent and easier to get. Are we seeing any of that black tar heroin on the streets here?
We haven't come across it. We're familiar with it. Ours is the seizures that we've had have been just a regular heroin that's been around for a while. It has come back in prevalence, but we know it's there. It's just a matter of time before we start seeing more of it. You have that, then you have the synthetic opioids, the fentanyl, and those kinds of things. So we're seeing those types of drugs coming in. But what happens is the people who were on prescription opioids, they go out and they're able to get the heroin off the street cheaper and more plentiful. But what it is a much more powerful and more potent substance than what they were getting in their prescription format. So they don't know how to. They're not dosing themselves at the right proportion as what they would have been getting in a prescription format of the same medicine. So that's where a lot of the overdoses are coming in.
Okay. Commissioner Watkins. Were you next?
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Allen.
Thank you. Sheriff, on the opioid problem that we are having is really a bad problem, and you have mentioned heroin, but they are splitting that up to make it worse. Is that not correct, with a different type of heroin?
Well, you have the heroin, and then you have the other substances, the fentanyl, and those other components and substances and chemicals that they mix in. Folks that are addicted to these medicines and the heroin especially, they're always looking for that little bit higher high. They're looking for that next the next level of I guess intoxication, or that next level of euphoria, or whatever the feeling that they're getting, and so they're going to chase after that drug. So whatever the illegal providers of the drugs are no different than the legal providers. They're going to market theirs as the newest and the bestest and the most powerful to get people to buy it. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing different chemicals mixed in and that sort of thing.
Do you know if all our emergency services has those canisters like y'all have gotten a grant for?
I know our folks here locally have access to that, and I don't know about fire service or any of those. I think they probably do, but I know that the medical people have access to it, and plus our people at the sheriff's office have access to it, and so that's something we have to be proactive on our end to, because we're going to encounter more and more people who have ingested these substances.
Mm-hmm.
Have we had any deaths so far that you know of?
Well, yeah, they've been deaths, and I think Coroner Jones could probably speak to that, or the public health, because there are cases that people will die from a drug overdose, or they may be found with evidence of these substances around them when they die, whereas that in itself is not criminal unless you find out who provided it to them, but that goes through the public health cycle as through autopsies and toxicologies and that sort of thing. So there have been people that have died and continue to die from these substances.
Thank you.
Commissioner Watkins.
Getting to the same point Commissioner Allen was making, the Norcan prescriptions that you guys have, how have we had to use them, and how frequently, if we have, are we using those?
Well, yeah, we had a case back before Christmas where a couple of our deputies had to use it to render aid to somebody. Fortunately, we've not had to use it as much, but everybody has it on their in their kit. And also, it's as much too for an officer safety as well as emergency personnel safety, because some of these substances, like this fentanyl and some of these other substances, can be absorbed through the skin. So if you come across some of these substances and you're not sure, you accidentally get some on you and it gets into your system, well, we have something to counteract that. So it's a public safety issue, but it's also an officer and a first responder safety product too.
So, if I'm understanding you right, one to a few isolated incidences, but ODs on a weekly or daily basis
Well,
are still, or
that's where it goes into the public health. Now, the hospital folks and public health people could probably tell you more about cases that they get called of someone exhibiting signs of drug overdose that we may or may not see, because we see it if it's when we are doing drug case work, going after the sellers of the product, and our folks will encounter people who may have ingested it or may have gotten in contact with it, but we're not typically the first call when somebody has a medical emergency. That goes through the emergency medical system.
now I see the fire department and the EMTs. Are y'all here for this subject?
No, they're here for public safety.
That's okay with me.
Is that okay with?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
You have a
Y'all
doctor.
come up.
Yeah, because they probably see a lot more of it than we do because of their emergency response to
Okay.
people who have OD'd.
Okay, y'all welcome to come on and
Fire chief.
just if you could briefly kind of give us whatever information you can add to this topic. It's an interesting topic.
Yes, my name is Dr. Nathan Allen Stokes. I'm an emergency physician, board certified in emergency medicine. I'm also the EMS medical director for Macon-Bibb Fire Department, Navicent EMS, as well as some other EMS agencies in the area, Monroe County Services, AREVAC, Leipzig, Georgia. The topic of the opioid crisis is a significant one. We see it. I also work as an emergency physician at Navicent Health in the ER. We see it very often. I don't know, we could pull our statistics to see how often this occurs in our jurisdiction as far as call volumes, but I mean, I can tell you that we give Narcan, or naloxone is the generic name for it, quite often, and we see all different levels. We see it with heroin users, with opioid prescribed medications that are abused, not taken as prescribed, or bought off the street by other individuals. This is a prescribed medication. There are some untoward effects in giving it, but generally it's been accepted as a safe therapy they've looked and talked about, moving this into the lay public and selling it over the counter for folks who use these medications in case they accidentally overdose, or if they know family members or friends who use illicit drugs, that they can have this, readily available for them to use. We've seen it being used more prevalently in the first responder systems, not just with fire, medically trained personnel, but also with law enforcement. And sometimes those, just like with AED use with law enforcement, sometimes there are certain conditions and therapies that when seconds to minutes count, it can make a huge impact. So sometimes, that doesn't really resolve or treat them long term, but it gives us that kind of stopgap to restore respirations and the cardiovascular system that may be affected by heroin or opioid abuse until other EMS personnel can get there, more advanced treatment can get there.
Okay.
Fire Chief asked him if he got the
You want to
mechanics.
go?
Sure. So I'm Jason Brady. I'm the EMS director for Navicent EMS, and the overdose issue has become extremely complicated over the last couple of years, especially with fentanyl and some of the synthetics. I'd have to pull stats as well, but I can tell you that we respond to those calls, if not on a daily basis, multiple times a week. Just yesterday, myself and my Region 1 Bibb County captain responded to an overdose right here at Crystal's at Spring and Riverside, where we resuscitated a man with Narcan. So we do this almost on a daily basis. And I know Chief Riggins, his units respond with us in these cases. This is one of those matrices that we utilize first responders to go with us on. And you want to speak to that?
Okay. Chief, welcome.
Thank you all. It is pretty prevalent, if you will, in our community as well. We're certainly not exempt from this issue going on in our community, but we do respond well with them and are trained to do it. And we the fire department, just received a grant for the kits themselves, so that'll be coming for you to accept the grant. But we have the funding source for that now, and we'll be having the kits on board fire apparatus as well, the Narcan kits.
So just because I'm
Okay.
curious,
Go ahead.
I was under the impression that heroin had went out of style. So is it returning in a very heavy way over the last 3 to 5 years, or has it always been somewhat there and we just pay more attention now?
I think it's always been there. It's probably just because of fentanyl and cofentanyl, carbofentanyl has been more prevalent of what we've seen lately.
What's that?
That's the synthetic type of fentanyl that's
The nether drugs.
Carfentanil is a kind of a high dose or high potency synthetic opioid. It does respond to Narcan. Narcan is a competitive antagonist, so the way it works is if you have a certain amount of drug that you're trying to block in the system, if you give a certain amount of it, if there's enough
They cancel each other out.
yeah, so sometimes you need, so with carfentanil, for example, sometimes it requires a higher dose of Narcan to arouse the patient or bring them back to improve their respiratory status and cardiovascular system. So it poses more challenges, particularly as a medical director. We set up, typical protocols or clinical guidelines that direct personnel as far as how much to give. But with all these variations of substances out there, it's sometimes difficult to find the right dose.
Is fentanyl a legal or illegal? Is it prescription based or street based?
Well, fentanyl itself is Sublimase is the other name for it. It is a prescribed opioid pain reliever. There are some other variations where they will take a molecular structure that's very similar to the prescribed and then make modifications to it to make it more potent. And those substances aren't prescribed. They're just kind of marketed and sold on the street.
What is or is it 50-50 between street drugs and prescription, or which one of those are creating the most common problem?
I mean, from a clinical standpoint, I can tell you sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we treat the patient and they have a positive response to it. And so we know an opioid was in play, and we can do a urinary drug screen, which tells us opioid medications are within the system. But to narrow it down
I get it.
more specifically, it would either have to go to a toxicologist or they would have to go and find the source from a law enforcement standpoint and then report that.
This is one more thing for us to be kind of depressed about. But we are happy to have folks such as you all working in the field to counteract some of these kinds of things, or at least to have a remedy, for those people who are addicted and find themselves in a medical crisis. So we appreciate, this is not the end of the discussion. We don't have the health department officials here, but you've provided a lot of information from that standpoint. But with the permission of the committee members, we will have you back and have this as a further discussion, because we've just kind of scratched the tip of this on this health issue. And we certainly will invite the Public Health Macon-Bibb Health Department, where Commissioner Allen and I serve on that board. We'll have them along with you and maybe have a lengthier discussion. But we appreciate, and y'all keep doing what you're doing for our constituents. Thank you so much. Okay. We have the land bank, followed by our recreation update.
Thank you for allowing me to come here to speak with you today and update you on the land bank and its operations and its activities. You have before you a handout that I've prepared. It's pretty much focusing on blight, but it will also include some of the other things that we in the land bank do. And I'll move pretty fast because I know we are. Okay, I'll move pretty fast because I know you're on a timetable. But if you look, you'll see up there each of the projects that were in round one. As we know, each district received money with which to acquire properties that were blighted. And you chose those properties, and the land bank was given the list of well over 200 properties to acquire. When we did our initial assessment, we discovered that about 50% of those properties, the taxes were being paid on, and that was really surprising to me that we have blighted properties out there where we have owners or heirs paying taxes. So, but if you look right here, you will see each area. We worked on, to say 16 projects, but 2 of them we did not work on. One was your Mill Hill auditorium, and the other, we started Jeffersonville Road, but then that was changed and the money was allocated for the community center in Kings Park. So the numbers don't quite add up there as far as projects is what we have acquired in each project area, and then what we have disposed of in each project area. So you'll also see an acquisition status that will show you if we've completed that project with everything that's been identified that we are able to acquire, and what's remaining there. So, and if you have any questions about each of these, just please stop me and ask. There we go. Whew. We also worked on 2 projects outside of, I'm going too fast. Outside of the 9 districts. We worked on, for Commissioner Jones, the Alexander Forest School. So we negotiated with the school board, acquired that property, negotiated with Dover Development out of Tennessee, and worked with Historic Macon Foundation to make sure that that property was going to be redeveloped, that the historic character would remain. And so that was closed back in December, and I expect to hopefully see work starting out there any day now. They had anticipated in February. We haven't seen that. But that's an $8.8 million project that will bring tax revenue, that will bring jobs, because they're hiring locally. So Land Bank was instrumental in acquiring that property. We also worked on the Wise Avenue project. And so that project included identifying 23 properties that were blighted, and some were commercial, some were residential, and Land Bank has acquired all 23 of those properties over there, and so that's ready for redevelopment now. But that was also used with blight funds and bond money. In July, we looked at round 2. And because a lot of the properties that were in round 1, taxes were paid, and we ended up spending a lot of time and effort and money to work on properties that were really hard for us to acquire, especially in a short time period, we sat down with Cass Hatcher and we said, let's be a little bit more strategic in what we're going to acquire in these areas, and let's make sure that we're identifying properties that we're going to be able to acquire much more easily. And so we've identified 70 properties approximately, and these are your projects there that you picked for round 2. These properties were identified and given to us back in July when we received them. The majority of these properties were tax delinquent and we're going to go through the interim foreclosure process, and I'm going to go through that process with you. But that means it's going to take a while to acquire them because it's got to go through that process. If there were critical properties that we needed to acquire, then they were added there even if someone was paying the taxes on them. So we are now just starting to acquire the round 2 properties because we were given those properties in July. We went through and assessed them very quickly, and if they were tax delinquent, they were automatically sent to go through the interim foreclosure process. So now they're starting to roll. We're starting to see them. So we'll start seeing, we had a little lag in acquisition over the last couple of months, but now, because we're stopping and ending round 1, starting round 2, so you can see that we're now starting to acquire at tax sales, and tax sales are being scheduled, and hearings are being scheduled. Just to give you an idea of what we do when we have to acquire properties and identify properties, first thing we have to do is figure out who owns the property. And by looking at the tax assessors, you know, a lot of people go to the tax assessor's website and say, oh, this is who owns the property because that's who the tax bill is going to. That's not necessarily true. So we have to get a title report to see who owns that property. It might be 5 people that own that property and have an interest in that property. And then we have to figure out if we can identify all 5 people and find them, because we'd have to get with all of them in order to purchase the property. So that's the first thing we do is a title report to see is the property something that we can acquire directly without having to send it through a foreclosure process. It could have a mortgage on it, and we've come across that. There's one of the properties I know over across from the fire station where the gentleman is paying the taxes on the property, so we can't foreclose or send a foreclosure notice but has a $36,000 mortgage on it. So in that case, we're trying to identify who holds the mortgage, and it's a company in California, and find them. So it's not as easy as just picking up the phone, calling somebody, saying, "Can I buy your property?" If the taxes are delinquent, though, then we automatically send it over and ask the tax commissioner to move forward with an in-rem tax foreclosure. That process takes some time. You have a flow chart there that I handed out. Probably can't read it, but I have listed the steps in the presentation. So you do get the steps. You can read those, hopefully. And here's the foreclosure process. There are 11 steps, as you can see there. And this is dictated through the state law. Property rights are very important. If those of you that are familiar with the code enforcement process and what you have to go through just to tear a house down, imagine what you have to go through to take someone's property or foreclose on someone's property. So you can see there's 11 steps that it goes through. There are time dates that are minimums, like you can't do something for 30 days or you can't do something for 45 days, or we have to advertise it for 4 weeks. So we're finding that it really takes us about a year to get a property when it goes through the interim tax foreclosure process. What are our top obstacles to acquiring a property? First of all, as I just described, we might have an owner that pays the taxes on the property and they're like, "I want to sell." So even if that's a blighted property, I don't have any way to buy that property if they're paying their taxes and they don't want to sell it. Secondly, they might be willing to sell the property, but they have a lot of liens on it, maybe some old mortgages. And so, we can't buy all these properties with old mortgages of $36,000, $50,000, that kind of thing. So we can't get clear title to it if they're paying the taxes. If the property taxes are delinquent, and we ask the tax commissioner to move forward with a tax foreclosure on it, and anybody from the family goes in and sets up a payment plan to pay those taxes, then they stop the foreclosure process. So I can't acquire the property that way. And last but not least, when we do initiate an interim foreclosure, it does go to the courthouse steps for bid. So we have to go down there and bid on it, and occasionally people outbid us and acquire the property. Our investment to date for your acquisition activities, we pay all the costs associated with holding, maintaining, acquiring, the foreclosures, disposing of properties, and our upfront investment has been $565,000 to date. We seek reimbursement from the county on that, and you pay us back. We have invested in an online data software system so that we can quickly pull up properties, answer questions, because when you have over 200 properties you're working on, you don't want to have to go run to the file cabinet and find the file. So we had to invest in some computer software so we could better serve the public, people that we were buying properties from. We created a website so we'd be able to market the properties. So you can go on our website, we have a blight category, you can go and look at the blighted properties that we've acquired that are available. And then we also just have increased expenses everywhere else for operations because we have tripled our operations. We used to have in-kind services for accounting services, and they're like, "Oh, nope, you're too busy now." So we've had to seek out accounting services. So we have day-to-day operational costs that have increased. And that's fine because we're doing 3 times what we were doing before. We also handle other acquisition activities outside of blight. We're working on 2nd Street Connector. We work in Bells Hill. We work outside of Bells Hill if somebody's interested, primarily with Historic Macon Foundation. Linmore Estates, we're still working with Habitat. Mill Hill, we acquired a lot of properties from Mill Hill, a total of 9. Patnell Square Heights, another 9 properties over around the dog park. Kind of helped clean up over there. We acquired some property through FEMA funding for Bibb County. We also acquire a lot of property for citizens that just walk in off the street. And they might want the property next door to them because that property, the grass isn't being cut, or they can't find the owners. So we will assist in finding the owners for them, and we help people acquire property next door to them just as a side lot acquisition. Or we also help anybody that comes in and wants to rehab a house, and they come in and provide a development plan, funding, and we'll acquire that property for them. So you can see what we've done since we started the Blight Project.
Let me ask you something. On these outside blight activities, do these different entities, are you reimbursed? I noticed you said you were reimbursed from Macon-Bibb. Are you reimbursed from these other?
Yes, ma'am. We don't have a line item to just acquire properties. So if that property's tax delinquent, then, and somebody comes in and wants it, then they'll pay for the cost. They'll pay the cost of the foreclosure and any costs associated. So, I mean, one good thing about the Blight program is we've had people come in Village Green and get properties that we didn't even target for blight. We've had people on kitchens behind Hunt School come in and get properties that we didn't even target. So we do have some activity going on that's allowing us to do more than just actually what we've targeted. Our biggest challenge going forward is going to be, how do we get rid of the properties we've acquired? That's going to be a challenge. Most of them are lots because, as you know, Cass is tearing down properties. So for us, properties are offered at a reduced rate, a third of fair market value. If we can find contiguous property owners that are willing to take the properties, we need to identify those folks who take the properties if they are paying their taxes and keeping their properties up. Website marketing, I think we need to do a much bigger campaign through our website for our blight. Putting signs out on the properties. And then last but not least, should we consider an auction just to see what kind of market there is for the properties? So that's kind of some things coming up. As we get to the end of acquisition, we've got to start figuring out disposition. And we're disposing along the way, but we're going to have a lot of properties that we're still going to have to maintain, pay insurance, cut the grass, that kind of thing. So the next big challenge is, where do we go from here? Questions? And I went really fast, so
Right,
slow me
and
down.
thank you for responding to some of those concerns that were raised in
Yes.
an earlier meeting. I was especially interested in methods that you're using to get the word out about what you're
Right.
actually able to do. And so I was glad to see that part of it, because I'm not sure everybody's aware
You're right.
of what Land
Right.
Bank is about, what you've done over the years, how it's funded, and, how they can get involved with it, how they can benefit from it, because it is a worthwhile agency. Any comments and questions? Commissioner Allen?
In the Bibb County area, you used to not be able to go outside the city limits, I assume, I think is where it was.
We could, we just didn't have any funding sources at that time. We were using mostly CDBG funds and home funds, and that was directed through the city's ECD department.
Right, but now we are one government. We're just all of Macon.
That's right.
And so does that mean that you will go out to places like Lizella or into other areas that used to be unincorporated?
As long as it's in Bibb County, we can go there. We can go anywhere in Macon-Bibb County.
So we just got to market
That's right.
better.
And I think something too, just to throw in there, is we did the survey that Commissioner Watkins funded. And so now we have a good idea where these blighted properties are. We can find concentration of properties. One thing that I'm looking at in the future is maybe we need to look at some tipping point neighborhoods that are stable but on the decline, and maybe we can go in and identify some properties
I think that's
to
excellent.
stabilize and keep anything from further declining in that neighborhood. So there's a lot still to go. There's a lot of work, and I do want you to know that the Land Bank's here to support you and to work on this problem, because that's our heart. That's why we're here. So anything, that you need, any questions you ever have, pick up the phone, come see me.
Okay.
Thanks, Allison.
still a little concerned on our disposition process. I just feel like we might be a little too conservative, which leads to prohibitive on us dispossession of this property. And I'm curious kind of as to I'm under the impression that we are, and maybe it's just my impression, but we are denying more applications than I'd be comfortable with based upon, I guess, some form of incompleteness of, and I'm looking at an application now, like,
Right.
so could you speak a little to the, if someone wants to buy the land on Ibex Lane for a nondescript reason, they have cash and they want to buy the property, why would we put any barriers in place?
Well, first of all, I think the first thing we're gonna look at is what is the highest and best use for that property. So if the highest and best use for that property is to go to, the next door neighbor, then that may be, maybe the neighbor asking for it. If the highest and best use is for that property to be redeveloped because it could be sold or rented, then we do have some things in place where the potential developer would need to submit a development plan, submit capacity showing that they can do the redevelopment, a timeline, and proof that they have the funding to do the development. Because the last thing we want to do is acquire a lot of properties and put them in the hands of folks that aren't gonna do anything with them, and they're gonna end up blighted again. That's the concern.
So, I guess, if there is someone who's a developer of questionable standard or not, they have the ability to pay the price that we have listed it, and let's say they are attempting to assemble the properties on their own, and their answer is, I'm not giving you my development plan, or here's the cash, here's my offer, which seems reasonable to me for us to, and also if our determined highest and best use is in conflict with the potential purchaser, are we in a position to say no, or are we saying no because of that?
The land bank is in a position to say no because the land bank has under the state law, the ability to set sales prices, to determine who gets the property. We don't have to bid it out, that type thing. So really, let's back up just a minute. When we first started, that was put into place. It was modeled after other land banks around the country, but especially after Atlanta, Fulton County. That these are the things that have to be provided. It's procedures that our board passed. So at the time, we could say that what we were acquiring was really what a developer was coming in and asking for, and 80% of what we were acquiring was going back on the tax roll, was going back to a productive use. I think that with the blight program coming in, we're turning a corner. It's a little bit different now. It's a growth period. It's an education period. It's like, how do we go next? So I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. But but we do want to be really careful to make sure that when we spend all of your money acquiring these properties and someone wants to redevelop a house, that it's not going to be a blighted house, that it's going to go back to a productive use, or we've kind of, all our efforts have been in vain. But no, do we have to, not have to, but do we have procedures in place that say you need to supply these things in order to do a redevelopment project? We do.
Madam Chairman. Go ahead. I don't know if you.
We
Yeah,
do.
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Bivens.
Yeah, I think, in working on the Land Bank Authority for a long time, we've seen a lot of different situations, but one of the things we try to avoid is speculation. Somebody wants to come and buy some property, and all they're gonna do is just kind of let it sit there. We want to encourage development, but to do that, we need to know if you got a plan, you got a fund, so you can go ahead and do some work on it. Now, properties that are out there, people don't have to come to the Land Bank Authority. You can go out there and buy anything you want to buy. People come to Land Bank because it saves money. They can reduce taxes. They can see to it that you get a clean title. That's the reason people come. But the rules we have about
having a plan, a timetable, and showing that you have the finances to do what you say is because if people purchase a property and just let it sit there, and especially if it's gonna continue to be deteriorated, I mean, if it's deteriorated anyway, that's one problem, and that's what we're trying to help correct, but if the land bank is involved in that process and it's just sitting there, it's almost like we're complicit in having some blighted property. So what we try and do is to see that if the land bank's gonna be involved, the property is gonna be developed.
Commissioner
And
Watkins.
I understand the sentiment, and to me, it's just too conservative of approach. That in the sense of even if we sell it for $1, and if for the next 3 years they pay $400 worth of property taxes, and go cut the grass twice, that's $400 for $401 that the county is in the black on versus it sitting in the land bank authority for a decade, and us servicing it ourselves. Like,
But we generally don't accept property that's just gonna sit there a long time. That's why we have the timetable, the funding and all that, because once you get involved, we wanna know this.
well,
Okay,
I guess
but don't you have some properties? Didn't you say you have some properties that you've had for a while?
We do have some that we've had for a while.
How
In most-
many?
In most circumstances, that's gonna be somewhere like Bells Hill, where there's a plan that goes further. Because like I said, we normally, up until blight, it was not common for us to buy a property that we didn't already have an end user for.
correct.
So,
And I guess I'm just
Okay.
thinking with blight, like we're either we got 2 properties on Ibex Lane, or about to have 2. And I guess my thoughts are, with such a distressed area, if anyone calls us and is like, "Hey, I'm interested," it's not going to be a lot of supply and demand for a few years, I would imagine.
right. And to use IBEX as an example, we'll buy those properties, Cass will tear those properties down. I don't expect anybody to come in and build a house on it. So if I've got a willing body that wants to come in and acquire that property, I'm good with it. And we're
Okay.
offering them at reduced prices. You can get a lot for $335.
I think the important thing is gonna be to follow through on those suggested
Yeah.
remedies
Right.
to get more of the word out, more of the information out on it. And we'll have you back periodically to kind of give us an update, progress report, and we appreciate your time. Are there others that you need to introduce today, just for our
I
information?
don't think so, because you know Mr.
Okay.
Hatcher, and
Yeah,
we work very closely
I
together at this.
thought
so-
maybe you wanted to
He doesn't
introduce
need
him.
any introductions.
Okay, if you say so.
I do.
All right,
Biggest
thank
fans.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay. We have one more, and our time, we've been in for a little over an hour. If the committee will agree, we'll do the recreation update and then look at the 2 appointments, recommended appointments, and the other, we will,
For a later date.
yeah.
I didn't mean to sound too excited.
Yeah, I know you're excited about that. Hopefully our agenda won't be this long in future meetings. We can maybe cut it in half or have our meeting every other, either the 2nd or the 4th, because I think we're going to have a number of items that may take a little bit of time. I know everybody's excited about recreation in the community. There's some wonderful things going on. We just voted this morning for phase 2 of Fillmore Thomas. And so Mr. Walker has an update, a quick update for us on recreation.
Yes, ma'am. I'm try to stay very quick about time.
Not too quick now, but just
I'm waiting for. I did a presentation. Unfortunately, I didn't print it out, and I apologize for that. But next time, I'll have that for you. Okay. Yeah, you can just put it for me. That's fine. Next one. Yeah, next one. first we're going to talk about South Bibb Recreation Center. Currently, South Bibb is still under some minor construction, but the Recreation Center itself has been completed. The 4 tennis courts, a part of phase 1 and 2, have been completed. The 4 softball field, baseball field with concession stand and restroom has been completed, and the pool has been completed. And I was there last week for a health inspection, and the health inspection is passed for South Bibb. Next slide, please. Also, going into phase 3, Vaughn and Melton is now drawing those, and we're near the bid process for putting those drawings out for bid, as well as we're working with USTA on the tennis center that will be constructed, as well as the tennis court. There's certain requirements that we have to meet when it comes to hosting tennis events, so we had to bring them in to make sure we were meeting the requirements and put them with our architects to make sure lights in the correct place, courts are where they need to be, and as well as constructing that tennis center. Next slide. Moving on to the Elaine Lucas Senior Center. The Senior Center is well underway. The roof is closed in. Rooms are formed. Rooms have been formed. We have an exercise room, multi-purpose room, computer lab, offices, lounge area. The drywall is up. You can really see the infrastructure of the building, how it's going to work. Our estimated time of completion is around mid-June. That's if we don't have any rain days or the construction company requests additional time. So that's well underway. Our chairs came in last week, so we got to.
Thank goodness.
We got to get those put together and get them delivered to the current senior center, hoping to bring those over to the new one. So we are moving on. I was over there and did a walkthrough last week, so it looks really good in there, and it's going to be exactly what we need for a senior center. I'm moving on to the next slide. Luther Williams. We all know the budget was $2.5 million. They have started on the new concession area that's going to be right outside the gates. They're placing the steels for the new suites and the restaurant that's there, as well as the renovations for the restrooms. They are going to be renovated. And I know that was a hot topic from my understanding that those restrooms need to be renovated. So those restrooms at Luther Williams will be renovated, and the estimated completion time is May the 22nd. That's right in time for the Macon to help host the Georgia High School Association baseball tournament. That's going to be one of their first events that they want to help host before they start the opening season. So that we're well on the way. Hopefully we won't have any rain, and we can get that finished up as well.
Mm-hmm. Do they get the money from hosting that event, or does Macon-Bibb get it?
As far as I know, they're probably getting the money for that one. I'll have to research that contract.
Okay.
Yes, I'll have to look at that because when it came to hosting that event, it didn't come to me. They went to the Macon, Georgia High School. So, but I'll check on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I will check in the details on that. Dolores A. Brooks. We had 3 community meetings with WM2A, who's the architectural firm that also renovated Memorial Park, Frank Johnson, and did the renovations to Rosa Jackson with the additional gym. So we had our 3 meetings out there. We met with the community. They came in, and then from there we have designed a master plan. Charles Green actually had back surgery, and he did not want to present the master plan until he was able to come back from his back surgery. He did call me today. He is back, so we're close to bringing that master plan to commission for approval. We also presented DOT with the plan in that master plan to expand the driveway at Dolores A. Brooks. We're still waiting on approval for DOT on that expansion, and of course the lift station that went out at Dolores A. Brooks. The lift station motors, they were delivered here on Friday. They're on site, and our facility department is actually in process of getting those motors in. Those motors, his estimated time, Rob has given me that by the 23rd he will have those motors back in, and we'll be back up and running at Dolores A. Brooks. Next slide. That's all for my update. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer those questions.
Okay. Commissioner Watkins.
No, are you?
Any questions, comments on the recreation? Okay, that's exciting.
Matt
Commissioner?
Hubbard. Did you mention Matt Hubbard?
He didn't. I don't think he did.
I did not mention Matt Hubbard. Matter Hubbard, and been talking to Peter Givens. Matter Hubbard is short on funding to complete the entire project.
Oh no! Remember I told you me and Mr. Givens met. We had this situation about some ballast lighting for about
Okay.
90,000. And that put us back in line. If
Okay.
everybody's still cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
All right.
Yeah. I'll meet with him and then we'll move forward with it.
Oh, so problem solved.
Problem solved.
That's great. That's great.
Problem solved.
Yeah, because they're talking about the neighborhood over there is concerned about the, Pleasant Hill,
Dave.
yeah,
Okay.
reunion
Ring.
that they have, which has grown over the years.
Yeah, can I ask another question? We had a guy from over there, come down and a guy came down from over there and they're concerned about a fee. Last year, I believe we waived it, and I don't know if we need to bring it before the board again, but, you know, they've been having that Pleasant Hill reunion for years,
Mhm.
and they never had a fee. Last year, something came up about a fee. The board waived it, and so now, you know, that's kind of an issue again, so we need to work out something with that. I don't know. Maybe I could come by and see you or something.
I already spoke with the county manager, and we're going to take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds good because we have waived a number of fees for other entities, and people remind you, they don't forget
Yes.
when you do for another group, and they remind you of what you've done. You know, we did a waiver on the fee for Newtown for the top floor of the garage for their car show.
Yeah.
We do that. We've done that several times, and others. So there is precedent for these neighborhood and community enrichment type things. So I'm glad that's worked out.
Okay.
You have anything else for us?
No, that's it.
Well, thank you, and please express this committee's appreciation for you and your staff and all that you do for recreation. We know that you're going to need additional staff. Can you tell us how many more you're going to need for, say, South Bibb?
For Southfield, the proposal that I turned in had a total of 10 staff members.
That's a huge thing out there.
Yeah.
So,
I'm waiting on that, and we'll go once we figure out where
Okay.
we're going to be with it.
all right. Is that it? Okay. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate your patience. We know you've been here a while. Committee members, we have a resolution appointing Patrice N. Walker, MD, to the Macon-Bibb County Board of Health. Is Ms. Walker here?
No, ma'am, she could not be here. She is a practicing physician as well as associate dean at the medical school. What I did was to ask her if she could be here next Tuesday night for pre-commission. So we wanted to introduce this resolution and let her come and meet you at the pre-commission meeting next Tuesday night. But as you can see from her resume, she is eminently qualified and has been recommended to us by the folks over at Navicent Health.
Does everybody
moved.
have the resume? Okay, all right. Okay, if everybody agrees to that, that's fine. We'll just hold off on that. And that will come before, it'll be just pre-commission. We want to refer this to the pre-commission.
Oh, okay. You want?
Let's go ahead and do that officially as a committee because it is under economic and community development.
All right. Motion to refer to pre-commission.
Okay. It's been motion and second. Is that okay, Mr. County Attorney? Yes, ma'am. Do it that way? Okay. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The next one, Ms. Mayor, are you proposing doing the same thing for Dr. Ellington?
No, ma'am, I think Tom Ellington is known to everybody on the commission. But if you choose to do it that way, we'll try to get in touch with him and have him here next Tuesday evening.
Okay, let's do that because we've said we wanted the nominees here, and Dr. Ellington probably is in class now at Wesleyan. So if we could get him here, we'll entertain that same motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion and second to refer that to the pre-commission next Tuesday. All in favor? Opposed? All right, the other items, can we just carry those over? Mr. Morrison is here. He has been here, I think, all day. Do you want to give us a 5-minute just overview of what happened with the Dempsey Hotel? I've heard from a number of people, have gotten emails from some of the folks living in the Dempsey who say, oh, our home is being sold out from under us. And so that is why we wanted you to come and just tell us what is.
Thank you for the opportunity. Sorry, Rachel. Thank you for the opportunity. I know that it was quick coming last week because the board had just approved the purchase and sale agreement on Thursday of last week to purchase the property from the Barking Company out of Boston. It's been something that's been in the works for a long time, something that's been of great concern to downtown Macon stakeholders and residents for a while about the future of the Dempsey, and we were glad that we were finally able to work out an agreement to purchase the property from the Barking Company, and the plan for it is to keep it as it is, to retain the existing HUD debt on the property and to maintain the housing assistance program and use restrictions as affordable housing throughout 2035. No residents will be displaced, but material improvements will be made to the property, to gathering spaces in the property, to individual units, as well as facilities within the property, things that we've heard concerns about for some time. The other plans include making improvements to the ground floor retail space, which is something that would greatly benefit both residents and downtown in total. And just to have better local management, more breadth of management. That's why we worked with the Macon Housing Authority. Should the sale go through, we're still several months away from a final sale of the property, but to bring in the breadth of the operations of the Housing Authority, the resources that they have, the things that they can do for residents that frankly the current manager is not able to do. This is an outlier property for them, being a Boston company. And so our plan is to retain the local team, the local staff that's there at the Dempsey now, and all of the residents, and just have local management for the facility going forward.
I have a question.
Okay.
The garage that's been vacant for so long is a total eyesore. What plans do y'all have? I mean, it's not doing any good for anybody.
Correct, and that that's something that has to be worked out with HUD. That property actually still has the use restriction on it as affordable housing. So our plan is to see if we can't do something to make that a separate parcel so that it can be redeveloped, improved, anything like that. But that's why we say we want to make sure the facility is improved for the benefit of all of Macon-Bibb, because that's a problem for surrounding property values and the value of that property.
15 years ago it was $1.5 million to fix it. I don't know what it costs now.
Okay, any other questions, concerns?
So up until 2035, the existing use will be the use.
Correct.
You'll be dead. You're gonna die.
Hey, y'all discuss that later on. Okay, is there anything else? Mayor, you have any comments, questions? Okay, just kind of keep us posted on that. We know that Macon-Bibb allows y'all at urban development to use a lot of taxpayers' money, a lot of bond money y'all can do bonds on your own and all of this. And apparently, with this deal, y'all did a combination of a number of things.
Well,
So,
yeah, and I can speak to that. To now, we just have paid a earnest deposit on it. The plan is to market and sell bonds that are completely tied to the operations of the facility with no municipal guarantee. So not coming back to Macon-Bibb County to fund any of it. It has to be completely standalone.
but it's all of our money anyway, because you're acting on our behalf. So it's still Macon-Bibb money.
This
It
would
just
be
because
private
you're
placement.
allowed to do some things with it, you're still funded. It's still taxpayers' money. So I don't want anybody thinking that because you're a separate entity, that that's been a problem.
You're correct. It's all
You-
public funds, and it'll be a public facility. But I think the point that we want to clarify as well, that the Macon-Bibb general fund will not be impacted by this, by the purchase. So that's what we're trying to improve. That they are
Yeah.
separate pots.
Yeah, who guarantees what y'all do?
This would not be guaranteed by Macon-Bibb. This would be
Who's guaranteeing?
the operations of the facility, the property and the facility.
Okay.
So the HUD debt that goes into it, as well as the leases of the property itself.
Okay.
The operation of the facility.
Bottom line, you're operating on behalf of Macon-Bibb, and taxpayers are ultimately responsible. That's bottom line. We don't ever need to forget that, taxpayers. Okay, is there anything else to come before the committee? If not,
One clarification, Commissioner Lucas, you technically and practically, the Urban Development Authority is a completely separate and independent authority, and we need to remember that they are a separate and independent authority so that they can continue to do the things that they do and not be influenced or owing to Macon-Bibb County. So their independence is part of what allows them to do what they do on our behalf.
they are still funded by Macon-Bibb County. And that money comes from taxpayers. So whatever you say, it's still ultimately, they're operating on behalf of Macon-Bibb County, and we are ultimately responsible. That's why we need to know all of these things that are happening. But thank you for that, that input. If there's nothing else to come before the committee, is there? No. If nothing else, then we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.